this is Steven with Mod in Japan, and this is another episode of MIJ Tech, where we answer commonly asked questions. And on today's episode of MIJ Tech, we're going to deep dive into exhaust manifold / header options that are available for your V8 Lexus application. So what kind of header should you get? What's the difference between equal and unequal length? Why is there such a big price difference between equal length and unequal length? Should I get ceramic coated or not? Is it worth the money? Should I attempt this installation myself? Our team hears these questions pretty much daily, so our plan in this video is to go through each of those options step by step. When it comes to producing horsepower, most builders go with full bolt-on mods. When you're reading on the forums or the groups, you might see the letters FBO, which means full bolt-ons. This signifies that the person has all the standard bolt-on upgrades for their car, which usually consists of an exhaust manifold or header, a catback exhaust, and an intake of some kind. For today's discussion, we're going to talk about exhaust manifolds, otherwise known as headers. Today we'll talk about the two trusted brands that we sell primarily, which are PPE and Novell. First, let's talk about the overall design differences that are available, which are equal length, unequal length, and something in between. You probably haven't heard of the something in between, but we'll get to that in a minute. Before we talk about headers, let's talk about the components that make up a header. First, you have the mounting flange. The mounting flange is the plate that attaches to the gasket and then to the engine block. From the mounting flange, you have individual exhaust runners, which are pipes that channel exhaust gases from each cylinder exhaust port out to a merge collector, and finally the mid-pipe out to the mufflers in the rear. The brand sold most often by a mile is PPE Engineering out of Arizona, with two options available: unequal length and equal length. But structurally, what is the difference between the two? So the difference is actually very simple. An unequal length header means that from the exhaust port on the engine block, it's routing each of the exhaust runners to the merge collector as fastly and as easily as possible. So let's pretend that you were to unbend the unequal length header and lay them out one by one next to each other. It would look like this. So the exhaust port closest to the back of the car would be the shortest. The one closest to the front of the car would be the longest. The exhaust gases travel in unequal lengths to get to the mufflers, hence the name unequal length. So you might have guessed it. Equal length means that each runner is the exact same length, so it doesn't matter how far away the exhaust port is relative to the mufflers. Each runner is exactly the same distance, so if you unwound it, it would look like this. Since you have to make each runner the same distance, you have to route the piping in a very complex way, so they all reach the merge collector in the same distance. In terms of fabrication, it takes a lot of design, skill, and finesse to be able to pull that off. Because of that extra time and finesse, generally the cost of an equal length header is almost double, if not always double the cost of an unequal length. And before you start raging about the low cost of metal piping, you're not being charged for the material. You're being charged for the amount of time and delicate fabrication that it takes to be able to pull off a very complicated piece. This gives you little to no clearance during the fabrication process. So now that you know the difference between equal and unequal, there's one more which is kind of equal, but not really, and that's Novell. Novell manifolds are distinctly unique and not quite equal, but not quite unequal. It's designed specifically by them to create a very specific tone that is extraordinarily famous in the Lexus community. Another aspect that makes the Novell exhaust manifold unique is that each of the runners are individual pieces. They are not attached by the mounting flange. They float on their own, and even assembling them when they're in front of you takes a minute to figure out. There are only two master artisans at Novell that produce these manifolds by hand, so they take quite a while to produce, which is why the high cost. Again, you're not paying for material, you're paying for craftsmanship, design, and extremely high level of Japanese skill. This is a video of the first generation manifold. They have a new one coming out real soon, and we'll update you once we get that piece. Now that we talked about the type of exhaust manifolds, let's talk about their differences. When it comes to horsepower, they're all relative. It's a V8, as long as you let it breathe more, it will produce more power. However, if you really want to nitpick, according to PPE, between equal and unequal length, there is only about a 1 to 2 horsepower difference in what they produce, depending on testing conditions. So the real biggest difference between them is the sound. An unequal length produces a sound that's reminiscent of a traditional American muscle car. Think of American V8. In terms of equal length and Novell's kind of equal length manifold, these manifolds produce a more raspy exotic tone. So if your perspective is to get the absolute maximum horsepower per dollar, then unequal length is the best choice. If you are looking for something more exotic sounding and you're more driver experience oriented, then equal length or Novell would be the one for you. Additionally, with equal length, they say there's better volumetric efficiency and overall top-end performance because the back pressure from each exhaust port is equal. Each exhaust pulse travels the same distance, so it's more balanced, leading to also lower cylinder temperatures. Now, on the flip side, one might argue that the benefit is very small and not worth it, and unequal length is lighter weight from less material and has lower end performance from the additional back pressure. Now, to say which one is better or worse, or which is worth it, it's kind of a pointless argument. And this argument has been raging for generations over whether it's worth the money to buy an equal length. And we always see comments from other distributors or drivers that say it's not worth the extra cost. The real answer is it depends on you as a driver. What do you want out of your car, your driving experience, and ultimately what you can realistically afford? If all you are trying to do is to get the best horsepower per dollar ROI, then we should all straight pipe our cars in our garages because a Sawzall is only 150 bucks. Or we should all buy Crate LS engines and get donor Geo Metros from the junkyard, since you could smoke a Lamborghini all day long and the total cost is about $5 grand. So you decide which option is for you, what is worth it to you, and ignore everybody else because you're the one picking up the tab. Now on to ceramic coating. Should you do it? The answer is yes, always. There are many benefits to having your exhaust manifold ceramic coated. First, having a ceramic coating on your manifold protects it from corrosion and discoloration. Odds are you're going to keep your exhaust manifold on your car for the life of the vehicle, so might as well keep it safe from the beginning. Additionally, as metal heats and cools, it expands and contracts. The result is metal fatigue. The faster the temperature goes up and down, the faster the fatigue occurs. So the ceramic coating helps to keep the heat inside the metal so it cools down, making the cooling process slower, so therefore decreasing the fatigue. Additionally, it also slows down the potential for cracks. Thirdly, ceramic coating makes the header more efficient. Gases flow more efficiently at higher temperatures since it contains more kinetic energy. So as your header warms up, the ceramic coating keeps the heat in, the header ensuring that the gases maintain a higher average temperature than it did without a ceramic coating. Lastly, ceramic coating keeps the heat inside the exhaust manifold and less in your engine bay. This protects your engine bay from experiencing higher ambient air temperatures, which decreases the horsepower of your car since your intake will suck all that hot air in. When you're racing, it's not a big deal as you always have a steady flow of cold air. If you're daily driving a car doing stop and go, when you stop at a light, there is the heat soak. You get all of this for a couple $100, so it's not a bad investment, and is one that I personally would take every single time. The last question that I get is whether I should attempt the installation myself, and the answer on that depends on how mechanically inclined you are. We have seen the installation costs from our previous customers as low as $650 and as high as $1,500. It just depends on the supply and demand of quality technicians in your area. Expect that this job is easily an 8 to 10 hour installation. There's also not a lot of clearance for the installation, so most of the time people cherry pick the engine out or tilt it to get the clearance they need for the install. It's a big job. If you don't work on engines regularly, I do not suggest you attempt it. Definitely hire a trained professional. Now, I hope this video was educational and enlightening, and if you have any additional questions about exhaust manifolds for your Lexus V8 model, let us know in the comments below. If you like this content, be sure to support us with a like, comment, and subscribe so we can continue to make more of these. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.